It was a busy afternoon in the heart of the city. The luxury showroom of Silver Star Motors was glowing with lights, polished floors, and shining cars that looked more like jewels than machines. Customers in expensive suits walked around, whispering to sales agents about prices, features, and bookings. Among the crown jewel of the showroom stood a Rolls-Royce Phantom, freshly delivered for a very important guest. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement of power, wealth, and class. The air around it seemed heavy with respect. Just as the showroom manager was giving instructions, a sleek black car stopped outside. Out stepped the CEO of the company himself, Mr. Richard Hale, a tall, sharp-looking man in his 50s, known for his ruthless business style and strict personality. Employees quickly rushed to greet him, bowing slightly and smiling nervously. "Is the Phantom ready for inspection?" Richard asked in his deep, commanding voice. "Yes, sir," the manager replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's right here." Richard placed his hand on the bonnet of the Rolls-Royce with pride, but when he asked to start the car, something unexpected happened. The engine refused to start. A silence fell over the entire showroom. The sales agents exchanged worried glances. Customers looked amused, whispering, "Isn't that supposed to be the most reliable luxury car in the world?" The manager panicked and immediately called for the mechanics. 2 technicians rushed in with their toolkits. They tried to start the car, checked the wires, pressed a few buttons, but nothing worked. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as Richard's face darkened with anger. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "This is a multi-million-dollar showroom, and you can't even fix a brand-new Rolls-Royce?" The atmosphere was tense. Employees held their breath. Everyone knew Richard's temper. He was not a man you wanted to disappoint. And then, in the middle of that heavy silence, a soft but firm voice broke through. "Excuse me, may I try?" All heads turned. Standing a few steps away was a young girl, maybe in her early 20s. She wore simple jeans and a faded t-shirt. Her hair was tied back, her sneakers were worn out, and she carried a small backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked completely out of place in that world of suits, ties, and designer dresses. The staff stared at her in disbelief. "Who let her in here?" someone whispered. "She looks like she doesn't even belong in this showroom," another chuckled. The manager frowned. "This is not the time for jokes, young lady. Please step aside." But the girl didn't move. Her calm eyes stayed on the Rolls-Royce. "I know a bit about engines," she said quietly. "Maybe I can help." Richard raised an eyebrow, half amused, half annoyed. "You? Do you even know what car this is? This isn't some broken scooter on the street. This is a Rolls-Royce Phantom." A few customers laughed. One of them muttered, "Maybe she thinks it runs on bicycle chains." But the girl didn't argue. She simply said, "Sometimes the biggest problems have the simplest solutions. Give me 5 minutes." For a moment, Richard considered throwing her out, but something in her tone, confident, steady, and fearless, made him pause. He crossed his arms. "Fine," he said coldly. "Show us what you can do, but if you waste my time—" The girl nodded. Without another word, she walked to the car. Everyone held their breath as she opened the hood. Her hands moved quickly, skillfully, as if she had done this 100 times before. She checked a connection, tightened a valve, adjusted something near the ignition coil. Her movements weren't random, they were precise. The staff exchanged glances. "She actually knows what she's doing." "But how? She doesn't look like a mechanic." After just a few minutes, the girl closed the hood and stepped back. "Try it now," she said calmly. Richard rolled his eyes but signaled the manager. The key was turned, and then the engine roared to life. Smooth, powerful, perfect. The entire showroom gasped. The sound of the Rolls-Royce purring filled the room like music. Customers clapped their hands in astonishment. Even the mechanics looked embarrassed, realizing they had failed where this unknown girl had succeeded. Richard stared at her, shocked. "Impossible," he whispered. Then louder, "Who are you? Where did you learn this?" The girl wiped her hands on her jeans, gave a small smile and said, "Just someone who loves cars." Before Richard could ask more, she picked up her backpack and began walking towards the exit. "Wait," he called after her. "I could use someone like you in my company. What's your name? Where do you work?" She turned her head slightly, her smile still calm. "I don't work anywhere. Not yet." And with that, she walked out of the showroom, leaving Richard Hale and everyone else standing frozen, with more questions than answers. The CEO frowned deeply, watching her disappear into the busy street. Something about her didn't add up. Who was she really, and why did she look so familiar? Richard didn't know it yet, but the girl who fixed his Rolls-Royce would soon turn his entire world upside down. The next morning, the headquarters of Silver Star Motors was buzzing with tension. Employees whispered in corners, executives rushed with files in their hands, and the boardroom was being prepared for an urgent meeting. Something big was happening, something no one had expected. The CEO, Richard Hale, walked in with his usual stern expression, but his mind was elsewhere. All night he had been replaying the incident at the showroom. The image of that girl, the poor-looking one who had fixed the Rolls-Royce so effortlessly, refused to leave his thoughts. Who was she? He muttered to himself as he entered the boardroom. And how did she manage something my top mechanics couldn't? He didn't have the answers. But today he was supposed to meet someone far more important, the new majority owner of Silver Star Motors. Rumors had already spread like wildfire. Some said it was a billionaire investor from Dubai. Others whispered it was an American tycoon. Richard had been CEO for years, but he had never felt this uneasy before. The board members gathered. Suits, ties, laptops, files, everything looked as it should, but the room felt tense, expectant. Suddenly, the door opened. The manager walked in and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, the new owner of Silver Star Motors has arrived." All eyes turned to the door, and then she walked in. The room froze. Richard's eyes widened in shock. His hand tightened on the table. It was her, the same girl who had fixed the Rolls-Royce, the same girl he had dismissed as poor and insignificant. She wore a crisp white shirt and a tailored blazer now, but her calm confidence was the same. She didn't look out of place anymore. She looked like she belonged. Richard stood up in disbelief. "You," he whispered. "It's you." The girl gave a small, polite smile. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." "Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Carter." Gasps spread around the table. That name was not unknown. Elena Carter was the daughter of the late Jonathan Carter, a legendary businessman who had founded multiple companies, but had kept his family life very private. After his sudden passing, no one knew who would inherit his empire. Elena continued, her voice calm but powerful. "As of last week, all legal formalities were completed. I'm now the majority shareholder and official owner of Silver Star Motors." Richard felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Yesterday, he had looked down on her as a poor girl who didn't belong in his showroom. Today, she was his boss. I don't understand," Richard stammered. "Why didn't you say anything yesterday?" Elena's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "Because I wanted to see how people treat someone when they think she has nothing. What I saw told me everything I needed to know." A heavy silence fell. Some board members looked ashamed. They had laughed at her, dismissed her. Only now did they realize who she truly was. Richard tried to recover his composure. "But you fixed that Rolls-Royce like a professional mechanic. Where did you learn that?" A hint of a smile touched Elena's lips. "My father believed that if you want to run a company, you should know every part of it, from the boardroom to the workshop floor. He taught me engines before he taught me balance sheets. Cars are not just machines to me. They're a passion." The board members exchanged impressed glances. She wasn't just an heiress. She had knowledge, skills, and vision. Richard, however, felt his pride crumbling. For years, he had built a reputation as the man who controlled everything. But in front of this young woman, he felt exposed. He cleared his throat. "Well, Miss Carter, as CEO, I assure you I will continue to run this company with excellence. Of course, I welcome your involvement." Elena tilted her head slightly. "With respect, Mr. Hale, yesterday you saw me as a poor stranger and tried to dismiss me. Today you call me Miss Carter and offer respect. Do you see the difference? Richard swallowed hard. The truth was undeniable. Elena walked slowly to the head of the table and took the chair meant for the owner. Her presence commanded the room, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority. "I don't care about titles or appearances," she said. "What I care about is passion, honesty, and innovation. If anyone here thinks this company will continue as it did before, they are mistaken. Silver Star Motors is going to change, and I will lead that change." The room erupted in applause. For the first time in years, the board members felt inspired. Richard sat down slowly, realizing that the balance of power had shifted forever. He wasn't sure if he still had a place in this new future. After the meeting, as everyone dispersed, Richard approached Elena privately. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "I misjudged you yesterday. I judged by appearances. For that, I apologize." Elena looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "Apologies matter less than actions, Mr. Hale. Prove with your work that you respect people for who they are, not for what they look like." With that, she walked away, leaving Richard standing in silence. The lesson was clear. In a world obsessed with wealth and appearances, one young woman had reminded everyone that true power lies in knowledge, character, and resilience. And from that day forward, the name Elena Carter became not just a new owner's name, it became a symbol of change.